Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mayor Winger?
Here. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the title of this case, and this is quasi-judicial, the title of this case is Appeal by E. Stephen Lauer, Kathy Paget, Mark Tripson, and Charles Rell, thank you, of the approval of the Planning and Zoning Board of Site Plan Application SP 14-000003 for outdoor dining at Mulligan's Beach House located at 1025 Beachland Boulevard, Sexton Plaza. The first thing we have to do is anybody in City Council have any communications? I guess this is for you to do, Wayne.
Well, as for any communications, other contacts from parties that would be considered ex parte communications, if you have any to reveal.
No.
Not concerning this issue.
Okay.
No. All right, swearing in, Mrs. Bach.
Anyone testifying at today's meeting, please raise your right hand and be sworn in. I do solemnly swear that I have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Okay, there are no exhibits in this particular case, so we will move on to city staff.
Mayor, I believe there are going to be some exhibits.
Are there exhibits?
Yeah, it's just that the city clerk will have to keep all the exhibits after the hearing.
So they will be brought up as
part of the record. Yeah, they'll be introduced as you go along.
All right, are we ready for you, Tim?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You're being asked today to either affirm, reverse, affirm with modifications decision the Planning and Zoning Board regarding its approval site plan application SP 14-lot of zeros and 3 for the expansion of the outdoor dining at Mulligan's Beach House Restaurant. Your decision must be based on competent, substantial evidence presented in relevant documents in the testimony at this hearing. The only relevant issue in making your decision is whether or not the site plan application complies with the land development regulations. Other issues or concerns not directly related to compliance with the code are not relevant. I will demonstrate in my oral testimony supporting staff report that the competent, substantial evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that the site plan meets the land development regulations. Therefore, the appropriate decision at this hearing is to affirm the decision of the Planning and Zoning Board. As this hearing is de novo, I will begin my staff presentation with background on the site plan application and review the specific findings and conclusions reached by the staff and affirmed by the Planning and Zoning Board that were considered by that body in making its decision to approve the site plan application. My opening statement will conclude with a rebuttal to the central argument raised by the appellants that the Planning and Zoning Board incorrectly approved the site plan application based on a staff's misinterpretation of the code that outdoor dining was exempt from the parking requirements of the land development regulations. A little background on the application. The site plan application was submitted to obtain after-fact approval for the expansion of outdoor dining at Mulligan's, as was more fully discussed in my staff report, which is being included as part of the record. As the application requested approval for more than 1,000 square feet of outdoor dining area, it needed to go before the Planning and Zoning Board and subject to a public hearing. The 6,400 square foot Mulligan's Beach House Restaurant is part of a 104-unit Holiday Inn development. The hotel property also includes approximately 1,600 square feet of retail. I'm going to bring the site plan up since we're going through this meeting as if I were giving this to the Planning and Zoning Board. So.
You're entirely too happy. I have no more singing, okay?
The submitted site plan is displayed in your monitors and the two chamber display screens. It depicts the area of the outdoor dining and the brick pavers and existing brick pavers and new brick pavers. Other than the pavers, the tiki tables and other movable furniture such as Adirondack chairs, which aren't shown on the site plan, are not really germane to the site plan approval. The parking and trip generation for the outdoor dining and indoor dining is calculated based on area, not based on seating. So that area is what it's based on. The dash line on that site plan, shown on the site plan, is 3,280 square feet of area of outdoor dining. This area includes space underneath the roof overhang of the restaurant. The amount of outdoor dining under roof overhang is approximately 475 square feet. The outside the roof is the 2,805 square feet. The staff does the site plan analysis for all applications that come in. Section 6410 of the code requires approval of all site plans and amendments to site plans must comply with the pertinent general review, performance, development standards of the land development regulations. There are really two pertinent categories with this application. They're in 6410A and B, and they deal with also performance standards. As shown in page 2 of Exhibit 1 of Appendix A, which I've all provided you in your report, the site plan meets the open space requirements of the code. Other standards such as setbacks, floor area ratio, building heights are obviously not relevant to the site plan approval. The Public Works Department reviewed the site plan for compliance with the city's stormwater management regulations and found it in compliance. The site plan application demonstrated that it met the traffic concurrency requirements of land development regulations. A traffic impact study was prepared by the applicant's traffic engineering consultant and approved by the city's Planning, Development and Public Works Departments, Indian River County Traffic Engineering Division. A copy of the executive summary is included in Appendix D of the staff report. However, in their appeal application, the appellants have challenged the finding of the staff and the Planning and Zoning Board that the site plan meets the off-street parking regulations, Chapter 63 of the Code. It'd be useful to go over how the site plan specifically meets the city's off-street parking regulations, which is presented in page 2 of Exhibit 1 of Appendix A in the staff report. The hotel development, including its accessory restaurant and retail uses, received a parking exception from the Board of Adjustment in 1967. This exception only required 92 off-street parking spaces to be provided for the entire development at that time. And these type of exceptions run with the property in perpetuity unless there's a condition on it. Section 6303 of the code sets the standards for calculation of off-street parking requirements. This section requires parking to be based on floor area, except for certain outdoor uses identified in Section 6304 and covered space under awnings and roof overhangs. Floor area is defined in the code as area under roof. Therefore, the 2,805 square feet of outdoor dining areas by virtue of the code exempt from off-street parking regulations, as it is not floor area. It's not under an overhang, nor is it listed as an outdoor use in Section 6304. And just a preface to or follow on. Previously, we had been requiring outdoor dining to meet parking regulations, but there was nothing specifically in the code that authorized that based on how parking was calculated. Only the 275 square feet of the 475 square feet of the dining area under the overhang is subject to the parking requirements, as Section 6303C2 exempts the first 2,000 square feet of area. Applying the parking standards for restaurants, accessory to hotels in Section 6304, a total of 3 additional parking spaces are required. However, Section 6303G allows credit for on-street public parking. As 10 parking spaces exist along the restaurant, no additional parking is required. And I provided an aerial of that site in Exhibit 1 to show that. Therefore, the staff, as confirmed by the Planning and Zoning Board, found that the site plan met the off-street parking requirements of Chapter 63 of the Land Development Regulations. Although performance standards in the code are intended to address site plans involving construction of buildings, parking, and landscaping, the staff did a cursory review of those aspects covered regarding impacts on neighboring businesses. The staff found that its location in a commercial area would not have disruptive impacts in terms of noise and other factors in neighboring business. The outdoor dining would only add 36 additional vehicular peak hour trips, which would be insignificant compared to the existing background traffic. Based on all these findings, the staff found the site plan complied with the land development regulations and recommended its approval to the Planning and Zoning Board. At the public hearings on the site plan, the Planning and Zoning Board, based on the staff report and testimony of the staff and the public, found the site plan complied with the land development regulations and approved the site plan. Now, I'd like to just briefly go into the rebuttal of the central argument. The appellants raised several arguments to support the contention the site plan was not compliant with the land development regulations. However, their only argument relevant to this case is their contention that the staff misinterpreted the parking regulations regarding the exemption of outdoor dining from off-street parking requirements of the code and misled the Planning and Zoning Board to approve the site plan. In 2011, the parking regulations went through a long vetting process that included 2 advertised Planning and Zoning Board public workshops and a public hearing before that body. The draft ordinance also had a first reading and an adoption hearing before the City Council. The parking regulations were amended to specifically encourage outdoor dining and retail display too, which is part of that, which would be in line for creating active pedestrian-oriented commercial and entertainment areas as envisioned in the vision plan. In my testimony today, I've gone over in some detail regarding how the parking requirements were met by the site plan. However, in trying to support its contention, the appellants are claiming that if the City Council had specifically wanted to exempt outdoor dining, the regulations would have specifically stated so. Without arguing the merits of this point, the record doesn't support their contention. Exhibits 3 through 6 of Appendix A clearly and unequivocally demonstrate that the regulations were drafted to exempt outdoor dining and retail display areas from off-street parking requirements of the code. The relevant language is identified by arrows in these exhibits. If there was any doubt or misunderstanding regarding the intent of the changes to the parking regulations 2011, this was put to rest when a PowerPoint presentation was made to City Council at the public hearing to adopt the amendments to the parking regulations. Exhibit 6 in Appendix A specifically identifies the exemption of outdoor dining and retail display from the parking requirements as one of the substantive changes to the parking regulations at that time. Just because the applicants don't appear to understand or accept the parking regulations or believe they should have been more clearly crafted doesn't invalidate the parking regulations as applied to this site plan. This exemption from parking regulations for outdoor dining has been applied to other restaurants on the Barrier Island and in other commercial districts throughout the city. To further bolster their case, the appellants brought up the issue of parking problems in the Beachside Commercial District. However significant this issue may be, and it's being addressed, it is not relevant in consideration of this appeal, which totally rests on compliance with the city's land development regulations. If the council is concerned that outdoor dining exception may be contributing to the parking problems in this area, this should be appropriately addressed in changes to the parking regulations, not retroactively and unfairly applied to the applicant. Unless you have specific questions of me, this concludes my opening remarks. I believe the evidence I provide in my oral and written testimony support the decision made by the Planning and Zoning Board. And I request my staff report with the appendices be entered into the record of these proceedings.
Is there cross-examination by the council, please?
Just one question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr.
For the planning and zoning, what was the vote for approval?
4-1.
4-1. Thank you.
Mr. McGarry, you said that it came to notice and hearing before the council. When was that? Do you remember?
I have to look at I think it was July. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, August 16th, 2011.
Okay. Further questions by council? No. Questions, cross-examination, please.
Thank you. And may I use the
You may indeed.
Thank you. Mr. McGarry, under the subtopic in your report called Project Background, it's noted that the unauthorized expansion of outdoor dining was brought to the attention of the Planning and Zoning staff by a representative of the owner of the restaurant. Who is that representative?
Mr. Lauer, can I get you to identify yourself, please, for the record?
She wants to know where you live and who you are, so we know.
Okay, great.
We're
Thank
officially,
you.
so that we can go back in
is-
our records, we have it.
Okay, thank you. My name is E. Stephen Lauer. That's spelled L-A-U-E-R, not L-O-W-E-R, as it was spelled all throughout the planning and zoning meeting. And I reside at 1890 Tarpon Lane in Vero Beach, Florida. I own 2 apartments in that condo, and I own the office building that is just to the north of the Holiday Inn.
Thank you for the clarification.
Who was the representative that brought this to the planning and zoning staff's attention?
Angie Shepherd.
And what were the members of the staff told?
Well, we were told that they had done some, put tables and tiki tables out on the site, and so I sent code enforcement out to look at it.
And when was this contact made?
I'm sorry, which
When
contact?
was the contact with the representative of the owner made?
It was
initially?
probably March of last year. I believe it was around that time. Or, yes, it's been
And
a while.
Had you received complaints from anyone else in the neighborhood at that time?
No.
Okay. Mr. McGarry, I'd like for you to take a look at the notice that we placed up on the screen dated July 24th, 2014. Could you identify that, please?
Yes, that's the notice we sent out to property owners within 500 feet.
And in that notice, it says that it's a proposed expansion of the outside dining, correct?
That's correct.
Why does it say proposed?
Because it hadn't been approved.
Pardon me?
It hadn't been approved.
It hadn't been approved, or it
It
had been built?
hadn't been approved.
And can you tell us the background of this situation? When this came before the Planning and Zoning Department, what state was the improvement in at that point?
Well, they have everything that is out there currently was out there at that time.
And was everything that was out there in March of 2014 when the representative of the restaurant brought it to your attention?
No, this is going on. It was the prior year that this went on. It was longer than that.
So how long?
It's been on for over a year and a half, probably.
And was there any code enforcement action taken?
Yes, there was a $50 citation made about that. We entered into an informal agreement with the the applicant, and tried to work with them, and they had to get a approval from the property owner to even submit an application. It took a long time for them to negotiate that. And the reason we allowed them out there is we've had good relationships in getting things done over there, but the understanding was the parking was not an issue because we knew the code, so it wasn't like it was a critical issue that we'd have them remove everything. So we made that choice. If I'd known it'd take a year and a half, I probably wouldn't have done it, but we try to work with people. It's not unusual that we do that.
And was that informal agreement in writing?
It was an informal agreement.
Well, an informal agreement can be in writing, can't it?
It was not in writing.
And who was the agreement between?
Well, it was between the planning department and them, an understanding that on that. So every now and then when we were getting delays, we would say we would move forward further code enforcement action.
And what was the understanding that you had with them?
That they would submit an application that would have to go to the Planning and Zoning Board for approval.
And if they didn't submit, what were their consequences?
Well, they end up being fined and most likely having to remove all their outdoor dining area.
Was that part of your agreement with them? Your informal
Well, they
agreement?
understood that, yes, that if they didn't come through, we were going to move forward.
Okay, you mentioned in your presentation, without really showing the City Council, the 2011 changes to the off-street parking and zoning requirements. Who drafted those changes?
I drafted those working very closely with the Planning and Zoning Board, which we normally do in our regulations.
Did the city attorney have anything to do with it?
City attorney has reviewed those, as well as the assistant city attorney.
And who was the city attorney in 2011?
The interim, I can't even remember. That was during the...
Yeah, it may have been interim.
Yeah, I think he was
an
an interim at that time.
And he is who?
Wayne Comet.
Okay, I'm going to pull up a section of the statute for you to look at. And actually, this has been marked as Exhibit B.
Oh, thank you.
It's 6303 of the municipal code.
All right, it's an intent statement.
I'm sorry, it's 6301 of the municipal code, which is intent. Could you read that for council, please?
It's the intent of this chapter to ensure that adequate off-street parking and loading spaces are provided to serve the majority of the traffic generated by development in a manner that protects the public safety, protects the capacity of the road system, reduces potential adverse impacts on adjacent uses, encourages flexible approaches to meeting parking needs through shared use of parking spaces, and complements and furthers the establishment of mixed-use pedestrian-oriented commercial areas within the city as identified the comp plan and other city policies.
Now, you mentioned in your testimony, your direct testimony, that the intent of the parking, one of the intents of the parking changes was to encourage outdoor dining.
Correct.
Where is that in the intent?
Its intent further establish mixed-use pedestrian-oriented. It's part of a principle that for mixed-use development.
So pedestrian-oriented means outdoor dining?
It did in the context of the workshops and the explanation to the while we worked on those. Yes.
But I'm looking at the specific language of the statute, not hearsay about what was said at a workshop. Where in the statute does it mention outdoor dining?
Establish a mixed-use pedestrian-oriented. This is a planning principle.
Okay.
So whether it states it directly in that does not invalidate its application.
I'm just not asking whether it's invalid or valid. I'm just asking where it's shown in the actual statute.
Well, I think I just answered that.
Okay. Okay, before I get the next slide, where in the municipal code does it provide for the parking, off-street parking requirements for temporary or permanent covered spaces? And I'm going to present you with Exhibit C, which is 6303 and
Yeah, I've got that in front of me. Thank you.
6304 of the statute. I want to put it up on the screen for council. I apologize that it doesn't all show up there, but I think Mr. McGarry can tell us what section of that statute pertains to the outdoor parking requirement for covered spaces.
6303C2.
Okay, and what does that say?
Temporary or permanent covered space, such as under arcade, awning, porch, building overhang, or similar structure attached to the building, approved under a site plan for dining or outdoor or retail display areas, except at the first 200 square feet of such areas shall be exempt from such calculation.
And was a copy of that statute actually, the wording of the statute itself, given to the Planning and Zoning Board?
Yes.
Where in the minutes was that given to the Planning and Zoning Board?
Well, it wasn't given at the meeting. I mean, we don't give them all the land development regulations at the meeting. That's what the staff is responsible to do. So this is clearly, this comes from the code.
So the information that the Planning and Zoning Department had, or the Planning and Zoning Board had at their meeting, was your interpretation of the code, not the code itself?
No, that was not only did I craft that's hardly an interpretation, but the Planning and Zoning Board worked with us on that, and we discussed that at a couple of workshops. So I would hardly consider that a interpretation.
So were all of the members of the Planning and Zoning Board in 2011 currently members of the Planning and Zoning Board?
No.
So there were people there that didn't participate in the original adoption of this parking regulation, correct?
That's correct.
And your characterization, the only information that the Planning and Zoning Board had at their meeting in which this was adopted was your characterization of the statute, not the statute itself.
I think that's rather misleading. If we were to give them the regulations, everything we do, we'd be doing drainage calculations, all sorts of other things, and we would have 5-hour meetings. That is what the professional staff does for them.
So the answer is
it wasn't
yes.
given them at that meeting. Certainly, if they ask us, we certainly would bring that up for somebody who didn't know.
And now 6303C2 pertains to covered spaces, correct?
That overhang covered space, yes.
And what is the section of the code that pertains to outdoor dining?
63. No, it's not covered.
So
it doesn't
outdoor
meet
dining,
one of those definitions. Therefore, it's not exempt. That's how the code was written.
So what you're saying is that outdoor dining is not covered by 6303C3?
That's correct.
Outdoor dining is not an outdoor use?
You can't find that, can you? If you look at 6304, there's only so many outdoor uses that are listed. It was intent to do it that way because of the issues that happened in the past when we were using floor area for outdoor dining, which was not in the code. So the simplest way to just exclude it from that, and there are several outdoor uses like swimming pools, recreation areas that we use outdoor area for making the parking determination.
So at your testimony here today that 6303C3 does not apply to outdoor dining?
No, it doesn't apply. Except where number 2 comes into play, and that's the only area where you get into that.
So there's no section of the code that deals with outside dining that's not undercover?
That's exactly right.
Oh, okay, good. Now, 6303C3 makes reference specifically to 6304, correct?
Correct.
And under 6304, is there several categories that are developed for different type of uses?
Correct.
Is there one for outdoor uses?
There are several.
No, but I'm looking at the statute, and one subcategory is residential uses. You see it right up on the top, correct?
Correct.
And then the next subcategory is commercial and service uses, correct?
Correct.
Now, is there a subcategory for outdoor uses?
No, you have to look under each of them. For instance, automobile, boat, and trailer sales. Doesn't say outdoor, but you look under there and it says floor area plus outdoor sales area. That's how it was done. That was how it was explained to the Planning and Zoning Board, and they supported that.
And your argument about this is that all of the different categories deal with floor area, correct?
Well, almost all of them, that's true. Other than a few instances.
Now if you look at marinas, well, first of all, if you look back at residential uses, that's by unit, correct?
Correct.
And if you look at marinas, How is that use
Well,
characterized?
it's usually by boat slips. Or,
One space for
Yeah.
3 dry docks.
Right.
And you would agree that a golf course is an outdoor use, correct?
Well, it's done by holes. It's a little different.
Is it an outdoor use?
It's an outdoor use, but again,
It's not done by square footage, it's done by holes.
it's done by holes. That's exactly right.
And then also public parks and outdoor recreation uses, is that done by square feet?
It's been done by area.
Acre, correct?
Yes.
And how is public, private, or commercial boat ramps calculated?
Let's see. I'm lost. I can't read up there, so I've got a
Oh, it's on your sheet.
per ramp. Yeah.
6 spaces per ramp, correct?
Correct. And none of these are floor area.
And your argument is that outdoor dining is exempt because it doesn't have floor area, although you have a number of categories under 6304, which are outdoor uses that are not calculated by floor area.
That's correct. And if we wanted outdoor dining in there, you would have seen it under there.
Well, do you have outdoor car sales?
Yes. Automobile sales, that's in display.
Does it say outdoor?
Outdoor display, I believe. Let me see.
Do you have outdoor boat
Plus
ramps?
one space per 2,500 square feet of outdoor sales area.
Okay, you have outdoor boat ramps?
Yes, I assume we would.
Yeah. Does it make reference under boat ramps to outdoors?
Of course not. But then again, we're hoping people are a little logical when they read these.
Okay, you mentioned the August 16, 2011 meeting in which this city council considered this proposed parking amendment. Did you make it clear, absolutely clear, that outside dining was exempt regardless of the size of the area?
Yes. Did I state it on there regardless of the size of the area? No. But there were no limitations shown.
But I did have a
go
question,
ahead.
and if you don't mind, I'm going to
No.
skip back a couple slides.
Sure.
The outdoor seating.
Yes.
I do have a question on. Oh, you went really far. The outdoor seating. There have been a number of concerns brought to my attention in terms of our Panera Bread site, where their outdoor seating, I believe, was not counted for parking. And there are days when no one can, at this point, find a space in that lot with Joey's open for lunch and Panera. Why would outdoor seating on a routine basis not be counted when those are cars coming in for people to put their
Well, they usually have
person in a seat?
They usually have a fairly quick turnover at Panera's, but to be honest with you, in that case, it was counted in the outdoor. We did count Panera's. That was one of the ones we did. I think on a general.
I believed when we had went through the new plans, you had mentioned when they had got approved for their new design, you had told us at that point that that was not counted.
Well, I'd have to check, and I apologize because it was a while ago. I may have. I thought it was. I would have to check, John. I'm sorry.
Okay. If we could just find out about that, because in that particular case and in other cases similar, that could be a concern.
Well, I mean, the other thing we could do, if you're really concerned about that, I would put a limit on the outdoor space just like say 1,000 feet or 500. That can be done that way. That is the only place. The problem with Panera is that place is not fully developed out, and it's very difficult to determine the parking there. And my understanding that the gentleman's coming back in with a revision again to that to downsize even further that. So that's an atypical situation. We have not had that problem. And remember, parking requirements are based on the average of uses and not on the highest. And Panera's is a very successful place. And I mean, it's a cautionary tale, I agree on that. But I mean, that would be one thing, that you could just limit the outdoor that is exempt from the parking. We just haven't had that issue in other places in the city, and that's why we did it that way.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I may be wrong on that. I'll check for you.
So is that an accurate depiction of your unequivocal statements about outdoor dining?
Yes, I mean, I answered the questions. It wasn't changed at the hearing.
And you promised to get back to her. You weren't sure about.
Well, I can't
certain
remember if I
provisions.
got back to her or not. I mean, it's over 3 years ago.
Now, for the purpose of your calculation of the parking spaces that were allowed to Mulligan's in this site plan, did you give credit for public parking places?
Yes.
How many?
Well, I said 7 in the staff report, but I think there are at least 10 out in front of it, and we corrected that in this report.
Okay, is there a provision of the code that allows you or requires you to give credit for public parking?
Yes.
And how long has that been part of the code?
Ever since this was adopted, I believe, back in 2011, this was part of the whole comprehensive plan.
And your calculation of the parking spaces required for this site plan was based on a 1967 agreement or minutes of an agreement that the Planning and Zoning Board had. Was the credit for the adjacent parking spaces part of the code in 67?
No, that's all brand new.
So you give Mulligan's the benefit of this 1967 agreement, and then you add on the benefit of 7 contiguous parking spaces, correct?
Well, it's not the benefit of it. That runs with the property. It's a property right that the hotel has. Any expansion to a use, we calculate the new, whatever new parking's added. In this case, because of the exemptions outdoor dining, only 3 spaces were needed,
but
in which the credit came into play.
Isn't that double dipping? You give them the benefit of this agreement, and then you also give them the benefit of the new code provision. Why didn't you apply consistently?
Because that's how our code operates. We started retroactively penalizing people because they had something prior to that. That isn't how it works. Unless there's a condition placed on the exception, which there was no condition. It runs for the life of that property.
And in addition to having the benefit of that agreement, they also get the benefit of any code enhancements?
Like every other property owner in the city.
That's your testimony today, that any property owner who has an agreement with the city gets not only that agreement plus the benefit of any amendments to the code that would afford them additional parking.
Excuse me, agreement with the city? Please explain what you mean by agreement with the city. It's not a special exception. It's not an agreement with. It was.
Well, I'm talking about the 1967.
It's a special exception. It's like a variance from the parking which they were given.
And if you did not allow these 7 parking spaces to Mulligan's, would they have?
They would have to get 3 additional spaces. That's correct.
Could you allow me to finish my question, please? If you didn't give Mulligan's the benefit of these 7 public parking spaces, would they have met the parking requirements?
No.
Did you tell the Planning and Zoning Board that that was the case, that they would
I
not
don't
have met
recall if I did, but I mean there were credits for it, so it's in the code. It'd be a little hard to say we're not going to give you those credits.
So what your testimony today is that you get the benefit of this 1967 agreement, plus you get the benefit of the contiguous parking spaces. And the Planning and Zoning Department had no reason to know that this was separate and had no reason to deny the site plan because of inadequate parking as a result of those spaces.
I think you're selling the Planning and Zoning Board a little short here. These people know the code. They've worked with us, and they know what a special exception is, and they know how the code works. They've done numerous site plans.
Okay. Now, who is the owner of the property on which Mulligan's operates its business?
I think it's Volgan Inc. or something to that effect.
And was, I believe it's Velogan Inc. Were they required to enter into the site plan application?
They had to approve the submittal.
And did they enter into the site plan application?
They gave authority to George Hart, who's the owner of the Beach House restaurant, to submit an application.
They didn't sign the application?
I don't believe they did, no.
And they're not required, the owner's not required to sign the application?
Letter of authorization is fine.
Is this, what I've put up on the screen, an accurate copy of the site plan application?
I believe so.
And as you can see, highlighted up in the upper right-hand corner, and we split this so that it would be easier for council to read, it says "See attached," correct?
Correct.
Now, do you agree that attached to the application for the site plan is a letter of authorization?
Yes.
So that was the authorization of the owner?
Yes.
Now, if you look at the letter of authorization, there's a reference to the Vero floor plan, correct?
Yes.
Now, was the Vero floor plan presented to the Planning and Zoning Board in
No.
your materials? No?
No.
Don't you think it's relevant to the site plan application to see what the owner actually approved?
No, because you don't know if the owner's seen the whole application. We have that all the time. And if the owner had a problem with this, the owner would have shown up to state their opposition to the thing.
And this says Vero floor plan attached here too, correct?
Yes.
And was there a Vero floor plan attached to this letter of authorization?
Yes, I believe there was, yes.
Okay. I've had this marked as Exhibit D. Is that the Vero floor plan that was attached to the application?
Yes.
And this is what the owner authorized, correct?
Yes. Well, at least that's what he put on the exhibit.
Well, doesn't the letter of authorization say that they authorize exactly what was provided in the Vero floor plan?
Yes.
Now, here's the site plan. Are they the same?
No, but it's immaterial. These are all, it's the area, and that's what this, there's no scale to this. As I said again, we don't get involved with the property owners on this, on every little thing that's done on a site plan. And it's clear if you look at this thing, there is more out here than there's the 7. It's not drawn to scale, but it does kind of show what they want to do. You got the chairs out to the left-hand side. You got the fire pit. You got the tiki huts. I believe there's 7 of them there, and it's conceptually what they put out there. And if you need to talk directly to Mr. Hart if you want to get any more than that, but that's what was agreed to. You have to remember they also did a had to amend their lease, and there's a lot of money involved here. So I'm sure, I mean, this meets the intent here. It's just, this is not to scale at all. This is more of something you would use if you're for servers at tables and things.
Now, you're saying the Vero floor plan is not to scale?
No, it isn't to scale.
So is it fair to say that the owner did not approve the site plan?
No, I don't. The intent was to what he has out here, because it doesn't show it exactly like he had out here. It does not. But clearly, you see 7 tiki huts here. The patio area is that covered area already, so it's pretty close to what they want to do. Yeah. So I mean, you know, again, remember these are all movable chairs and tables.
Okay.
So we're not dealing with site improvements that are fixed on that property.
Mr. Lauer, these two charts, which is which, and what's attached to what?
The Vero floor plan?
This
yes,
one,
the
what
Vero
is it?
floor plan is what is referred to in the letter of authorization, and that's attached to the letter of authorization. It was not attached to the letter of authorization that was presented to the Planning and Zoning Board. It was conspicuously missing. I had to find it in order to give it to you today. But this is what was attached to the letter of authorization, and this is the site plan.
Thank you for your clarification.
Now, I would like to move on to this Vero or Holiday Inn parking agreement. What exactly is that parking agreement?
It's a special exception. I don't have it in front of me, so.
I've had it marked as Exhibit F. And as you can see, it's very difficult to read, and I have retyped it on the right-hand side so it's easier for council to be able to read.
Okay.
So this, what we have up on the screen right now is what is sometimes referred to as the 1967 Holiday Inn Parking Agreement, correct?
Correct.
Did you provide the Planning and Zoning Board with a copy of this parking agreement?
No, we didn't.
Did you provide the Planning and Zoning, did you, in attachment A to your report, you categorize these minutes, the parking agreement, to establish a parking requirement as follows: hotel at 1 space per 2 rooms, 104 rooms equals 52, accessory commercial 1 space per 299 square feet, 8,000 square feet equals 40 spaces. Is that correct?
Did I do that? No.
Yes, in attachment A to your report here today.
Oh, I'm sorry, correct.
And where is accessory commercial mentioned in these minutes?
Well, they're accessory to the restaurant and the commercial uses, to the hotel.
So it does. This parking agreement doesn't mention accessory commercial, does it?
Well, I don't see it in here now. But
I'm sorry.
I apologize. Go ahead.
Does it also provide that 1 additional space for every 200 square feet of commercial area? Isn't that what it says?
Yeah, and the commercial area includes retail and restaurant, or whatever they had back then. I mean, this was pretty open. These have all been approved for what you have out there now before expansion of outdoor dining. We're going over a 1967 exception, which is, it's water under the bridge.
And where is the 299 square feet that you mentioned in attachment A mentioned in this parking agreement?
Well, I'm going to have to look. Well, that's not correct, I guess. No, I don't know where that is.
So the 299 was not consistent with the parking agreement, correct?
I'd have to look. It looks like it isn't. I don't see it in here.
Now, are there any circumstances under which the city of Vero Beach would not be bound by this 1967 agreement?
No, this runs with the property.
So if the hotel was knocked down and rebuilt, they'd still be subject to the 1967 agreement?
Yeah, unless they wanted to change, yes. It runs with the property.
And if they decide to put additional square footage on the property, would it be subject to the agreement?
Yes, it'd be calculated. They would have to make it up the additional, yes.
So the addition would be subject to the current code, correct?
Correct.
And is the floor plan for the Holiday Inn in 1967 identical to what it is now?
I guess so. Remember, we've had site plan approval since 20, 30 years that have approved what they have out of there. So going over all this is not going to be worthwhile.
Does council want me not to question Mr. McGarry? I'll be happy to move on if you don't think this is relevant.
I think you need to continue.
Thank you. Now, do you know where the restaurant was located in 1967?
Again, no, I don't know exactly. I don't know anything. All I know is we've had site plans approved prior to my coming here that had Mulligan's where it was, had its retail, and the hotel. So as I said again, that's been approved by the city. Right or wrong, that is what the city approved, and that's what's there. We're dealing at a new point in time, which is the expansion of the outdoor dining, which is totally. So going over all this is not going, the city has approved these things. So whether or not this has been calculated right or not is immaterial.
Okay, well, the 1967 agreement provides for parking for the hotel and the commercial uses, correct?
Yes, that's the way it reads here.
And if, under the current situation, parking was not available to the restaurant patrons, would you still be subject to this agreement? If the restaurant patrons were not allowed to park in the Holiday Inn parking...
That's immaterial. We do not go into how parking is done individually on a site. As you well know, we have owners who put out parking for this boutique only in a multi-tenant place. So we do not go into that.
And
that is not an issue.
Wasn't this a huge issue at the Planning and Zoning Board? Didn't several of the Planning and Zoning Board directors, after public comment, that patrons of the restaurant were not allowed to park in the Holiday Inn parking lot, didn't the members of the Planning and Zoning Board question this site plan application?
They brought it up. It did mean it was germane. A lot of issues come up, and they had to be taught back that it deals with the specific thing of the land development regulations, not whether they can park there on that property and all that. I mean, we have a lot of uses, old uses in there, including your appellants that have parking that don't meet the code. So, I mean, at this point in time, to get into that is not germane.
But my appellants aren't requesting planning and zoning for a site plan application, are they? Changing the...
No, they're not, but you have to understand the situation that it is not an issue in here whether or not they allow Mulligan's customers to park at the hotel site or not. And clearly it's an issue for the hotel to deal with.
So it's your position that it doesn't matter what the Holiday Inn does as far as their parking is concerned. If they say employees can't park here, patrons of Mulligan's can't park here, the city is still bound by that 1967 agreement.
Yes, it is. I mean, we have that all over. I think that's one of the major problems in the commercial areas, that the employees can't park even on their own sites. And that would be almost every hotel we got down there in the Barry Island.
What is the purpose of the site plan approval? What's the purpose of it?
Well, basically, the purpose is that normally these could be done administratively, but when we go to a public hearing, is that we want to be sure that we get input from the public on something that might be missed when you take an application out. In these cases, with this outdoor dining, as I pointed out earlier in my testimony, anything under 1,000 square feet and under outdoor can be approved administratively. But our concern was when you go over that you may have impacts in residential areas and all that, and that's why that it requires a public hearing. This wasn't really intended for something right in the smack dab in the commercial district, but we do it anyway. That's what the code says.
Okay, well, that's good. The code says, well, let me point it out to you and let you read it.
What are we reading now here?
I don't know.
I'll put it up on the screen.
Thank you.
It is cumbersome, yeah.
I'm sorry, that is not cooperating with me, but I can have him circulate. What I'm asking you to read is 63.06A, which says purpose.
Site plan review and approvals tend to ensure the development of structures and sites compliant with the code, and the process balances the property owner's right to use his land with the corresponding rights to nearby property owners, residents, and businesses, and the need to protect the public health, safety, and welfare.
Now, did you take the rights of the adjoining property owners into account when you recommended approval of this project?
I recommended approval. Yeah, I recommended approval because it meant the land development regulations, and we did not see any adverse impact, as I pointed out in our performance standards. That's why we recommended approval, and the Planning and Zoning Board found the same.
Now, were there a number of property owners at that Planning and Zoning Board meeting that expressed concerns about how this project was going to affect their property rights?
Yes, but they could provide no competent substantial evidence that it had any real impact on theirs.
And did you tell the Planning and Zoning Board that the rights of the adjoining property owners needed to be taken into account in making their decision?
No, but that's generally understood by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay. I have no further questions.
What was the exhibit that you just read, Mr. McGarry?
Exhibit G? Yeah.
Oh, give me the full number, please.
Pardon?
It's give me the full number, please.
Well, Exhibit G, and it's section 64.06 site plans.
All right.
I would like these exhibits that Mr. McGarry identified entered into the record, please.
Of course. All right. I believe we, Mr. Comet, we would then, if there are other questions from the other side of Mr. McGarry, we would honor him at this time. Is that not correct? So there are people in the public who are of the opposite persuasion that would like to talk at this point.
Oh, here's another one.
Well, for instance, Mr. Hart. If Mr. Hart is here, he would be a logical person to come forward at this time.
Well, actually, this is the this
Yes,
is just the
question,
city's.
Mr. Comet, is the question. If there's any rebuttal, it says on here, if there is rebuttal.
Well, no, this is just the city's presentation. So unless Mr. McGarry has something else to put on, it would now be Mr. Lauer's case to put on.
Okay,
his.
Mr. Lauer, it's your case to present, please, sir.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a number of exhibits that we have not been able to locate here, so hopefully we can get those together before we leave.
Hey, maybe we could take a recess. We'll give you, Mr. Lauer, we'll give you a 10-minute break to 10:40.
Thank
That would
you.
be helpful, sir.